What is up, everyone? Welcome to round 2 of the Cherry City Gaming Premodern Showdown. We got 2 rad decks to show you, so let's get into those deck lists. First up, we have Sean Collins on everyone's favorite Pillow Fort deck, Enchantress. I'm sure you've seen this list pop up several times on the channel because it is a very strong list, hard to interact with once the combo pieces are down, and just the card draw it generates is pretty spectacular. If you're not familiar with it though, it uses cards like Serra Sanctum's, Enchantress Presence, and Argothian Enchantress to just generate a ton of mana and card draw. Through that, it has lots of other powerful enchantments like Sterling Grove to give all your other enchantments Shroud, but also allow you to tutor for cards, and eventually does win with cards like Opalescence and Parallax Wave. And on top of all that, it also runs copies of Solitary Confinement to make sure your opponent cannot interact with what you're doing. At first glance, this list does look fairly stock. I'm not sure how much a 4 Serra Sanctums versus 3 Serra Sanctums is traditional, but I am noticing it's playing the 4 Mirri's Guiles over the Sylvan Libraries, which I think at this point has become pretty well accepted as the better option, and is running 1 Replenish in the main as well, which I think is also a good call, especially given the amount of more recent hate for Enchantress as it continues to, I wouldn't say dominate, but definitely do very well in major tournaments. I'm not going to run through card by card, but we will go over the cards in the sideboard as those are some of the biggest flex spots. Looks like Sean is running a single Sphere Law, I believe that's a Worship, a second Solitary Confinement, and a second Replenish, a Karmic Justice, a Sacred Ground, an Aura of Silence, a third Swords of Plowshares. I guess that is important to call out. He is only running 2 in the main, so a little lighter on that level of interaction than the deck I think normally runs. 3 Xanthous Worms, which do really clear a path for the big turns that the Enchantress deck can generate. 1 Tormod's Crypt, 2 Carpet of Flowers, and 1 Savo's Web. Very strong list. I'm sure it's going to do very well, but before we see the games, who's he playing against? Next up is Dylan with this sweet red-black contamination list. I'm totally not biased because I lent it to him. This list is based largely on one I saw at LobsterCon. I tried to find the deck author, unfortunately was not able to locate their name, so if someone is aware of it, please post it in the comments below. I'd love to give them credit where credit is due, but this is a contamination list, so you're looking to land a contamination early and looking to feed it with zombie infestations. This list does not run the more traditional Nether Spirit, and instead opts for 4 Squeeze and 4 Krovikan Horrors, which you have to do a little bit of sequencing there, but can get you, I think, overall a lot more value and a lot more zombies over the long run. The Squeeze aren't the reason we're playing red, though. He is actually running 2 Devastating Dreams, which, if they go off, are indeed quite devastating. This 2-mana sorcery for double red as an additional cost to play Devastating Dreams. Discard X cards at random from your hand. Each player sacrifices X lands, deals X damage to each creature. The ideal state of this being you already have a zombie infestation on the board and are getting plenty of value through Squeeze and Krovikan Horrors in your hand that you're able to pitch enough of them to essentially wipe your opponent's board of both lands and creatures and coast in for the win. At its heart, this is a prison deck with that contamination, so we are running lots of hand attack and removal to back it up, and I might as well just run through the whole list at this point. So we have a 1 of Anger, also another good splash for the red, turning your 2/2 zombie into a haste zombie, which is able to swing in before you have to sack it to contamination. 4 Squeak Goblin Bobs and 4 Krovikan Horrors. Those are your engine to make sure you're getting enough zombies out to win the game. You can hardcast them if you want to, but that is definitely more of an edge case. A 1 of Skeletal Scrying to help rearrange your graveyard if necessary. The Krovikan Horror can get sometimes trapped under instants and sorceries, and this is the best way to free it. A 1 of Vendetta as just a really efficient piece of removal. 4 Cabal Therapies, 4 Duress for just lots of hand hate. 3 Innocent Bloods, 1 Diabolic Intent as a 1 of Tutor in the deck to help you find a key piece you may need, like a zombie infestation or a contamination. The 2 Devastating Dreams I referenced. 4 Buried Alive, which is technically a tutor as well. It does tutor those creatures to your graveyard, which lets you get all your Squeeze and Krovikan Horrors. And then for the real engine of the deck, 4 Zombie Infestations and 4 Contaminations. Zombie infestations are generally how you generate the creatures to pay for contaminations. Arguably very steep upkeep cost, but once you get a contamination down, it's usually enough to force most opponents to concede. Although with the rise of Moneyball Black and other mono black based decks, obviously this is not always a lock. As for lands, he's running 4 Sulphur Springs, 4 Wastelands, 4 Bloodstained Mires, 3 Mountains, and 8 Swamps. Being in red also gives you some more sideboard options as well. We see that with 2 Red Elemental Blasts and 1 Pyroblast. The deck is also running 2 Null Rods, 2 Phyrexian Furnace, 1 Snuff Out, 1 Dystopia, 1 Perish, 2 Overloads to help deal with, say, some artifact hate that takes care of graveyards, and 3 engineered plagues. I will mention this is Dylan's first time playing the pre-modern format in general, and his first time playing this deck, which can get a little complicated with graveyard order mattering, but he is a Pro Tour competitor and an amazing player, so I'm sure these will make for some great games. Let's get into it. And here we go. Sean is on the left, Dylan is on the right. Now, there's not a lot that Sean can do against Resolve Contagion, assuming he doesn't have a Seal of Cleansing on the board already. Interestingly, his Wild Growths do still generate green mana, I believe, as they are a separate effect from the land. But I don't believe there's a way for him to... Actually, does he run Naturalizes? Not entirely sure. Either way, Sean started things off with an Exploration, allowing him to play out a second Forest. Dylan just going to play Swamp and go. Of course, Dylan does have to get to that point of the Contagion, and Sean is ramping a ridiculous amount here, playing out a Plains and a Forest, and then plays an Argothian Enchantress. Again, Dylan new to the Premodern format, but probably familiar with Enchantress, as it is a deck type in Modern, maybe fallen off a little bit in recent times, and then plays out a Sterling Grove. Now, Sterling Grove letting Sean draw a card off that Argothian Enchantress, but also giving all of his enchantments a Shroud, and also a tutor to the top of his deck when he so chooses, by sacrificing it. And that's all he's going to do past the turn. And Dylan's got the Zombie Infestation down. Gonna pitch 2 Krokian Horrors to make a 2/2. And is going to pass to Sean. And Krokian Horror does trigger on each upkeep, so he's able to get 1 back. Alright, we're going to play 2 lands out, or tap 2 I should say, for another Argothian Enchantress. And play a Wild Growth on the Plains, draw 2. And this is why this Enchantress deck just is so hard to deal with once it's got its pieces down. Argothian Enchantress having Shroud as well, so it's also very difficult to interact with. However, even though Dylan is playing black-red, notoriously bad cards for dealing with enchantments, he does have ways to deal with the Enchantress. Engineer Plague coming in from the sideboard would be huge here, but we'll have to get to that game 2 first. Mirri's Guile coming down, drawing another 2. Mirri's Guile, similar to Sylvan Library in that you can rearrange the top 3 cards of your deck, but unfortunately not able to pay life to draw. However, it does cost 1 less, and in this matchup, as you're seeing, the Enchantress deck really does not need to draw more cards. Okay, here Dylan is going to discard another 2 cards. Buried Alive. Well, Buried Alive, one of the cards going to the graveyard. Interestingly here, Krokian Horror needs a creature directly above it to return it, so by pitching this Buried Alive, he has sort of trapped this Krokian Horror. There is a way to free it with the Skeletal Scryings, but I believe there is only 1 in this current build. I think after this tournament I did up it to 2. Having instant speed draw is very good, but also being able to free up your graveyard a bit is also just very good. And there's really no reason for Dylan not to swing in here. Sean does not win through combat quickly, and he will not be blocking with his Enchantresses. And I'm not seeing much other action in Dylan's hand. He does get to untap still. I guess this is happening on... Oh, is it end step? Yeah, sorry. Krokian Horror, someone may already have commented this. Krokian Horror is end step. Both players. Alright, and then there's a Buried Alive. So even though that 1 horror is trapped, he will be able to get a few more pieces here. I think we're at least getting 1 squee, probably 2. and maybe the 4th Kurokin Horror. I think that makes the most sense, as he'll then be able to return 2 horrors to his hand. Oh, we're pitching an Anger as well. Okay. This also makes sense. All zombies now have haste, so he has 3 2/2s on the board. Yes, and that Anger will remain in the graveyard. Yes, yeah, of course the Buried Alive is the last to resolve, so Graveyard Order and Premodern Mattering is a bit of a tricky thing if you're not super familiar with it. On end step, he gets the Kurokin Horror back and says, go. Oh, and is that another squee in hand? So potentially being able to get another zombie here. Okay, we are going to Sterling Grove here on end step. Casey feeling a little bit of pressure, so he's going to grab Solitary Confinement. This fun card prevents Dylan from basically targeting Casey, dealing damage to Casey. And at the low cost of skipping Sean's draw step. Sorry, I'm saying Casey. I got the wrong name. Sean. Sean's draw step is now skipped, and Sean can no longer be dealt damage or be targeted. Essentially, he has Shroud. However, to keep the Solitary Confinement on the field, he does have to pitch a card. But as we've seen with Enchantress, at least having 2 Enchantress type effects, Sean does draw so many cards that it really becomes pretty negligible. Alright, first off, there's a Seal of Cleansing. Draw 2. Is that a Sarah Sanctum? Okay, there's another Exploration. Draw 2. Sean can now play 3 lands a turn, if he even has that many. I do see an Opalescence in hand. That is a good win con. Okay, we're going to see an Undiscovered Paradise for turn, maybe? Or are we just playing out the Solitary Confinement? Okay, playing out the Solitary Confinement. Draw 2. Still not finding a Sanctum. And Dylan just giving this a bit more of a read. Which, to be honest, is all he can do at this point. The Enchantress deck is popping off. And while Sean has lots of decisions to make, there's not much his opponent can do. Now he could... Actually, I don't think he can play out Opalescence here. Yeah, does not have the double white for it. But is going to take care of the zombie infestation. He did have a squee. Alright, we're going to get another zombie here before everything goes to the graveyard. So, Dylan does get a lot of creatures back on his turn. He gets his 3 squeeze, which if you still have the zombie infestation out, is good for another 2 zombies. However, with the Solitary Confinement out, there's not much you can do about that. So Innocent Blood actually is a good way around this as well. Having both players having to sack a creature, I think at this point Dylan's not super worried about losing a zombie and getting rid of some of the card draw that Sean has.
This card itself has Shroud. Correct.
Yeah, just double checking Oracle text here. I think Shroud does not protect against sack effects. Either does Solitary Confinement. Innocent Blood here should still work because it's each player. Yeah, getting some Oracle text here. And yes, we are going to fire off an Innocent Blood. Pretty good trade. A 2/2 token for a card draw engine. Sean does not have a lot of gas left in the tank. He does have an Opalescence in hand, but it does have 3 lands as well. Alright, so Miri's Guile is on the beginning of your upkeep. It's not during your draw step, while Sylvan Library actually is. There was some discrepancies in other tournaments with Enchantress, but Sean playing it correctly does still get to resolve the Mary's Guile, even though he doesn't necessarily get to draw off of it. Although he does have, again, this Opalescence, which he is tapping for to reveal his win con.
During my untapped step,
Dylan reading Undiscovered Paradise, being able to go back to hand, just one extra card to help pay for the solitary confinement if needed. However, Sean is missing some of the big enchantments to actually swing in here. With those army of 2/2s at Dylan's side, I don't think there's going to be any chip damage coming in. And of course, Decaying Wild Growth is not affected by Opalescence. I believe it's non-aura enchantments is the wording on it. Alright, Sean going to fetch here. The fetch land's very good in these builds with the Miri's Guiles and the solitary confinements.
So none of your enchantments have shroud right now. Okay.
And unfortunately, I don't know, did Sean find an enchantment? He had to have, otherwise he's going to have to try again later. But it looks like he is tapping out for an Enchantress Presence. Okay. This is probably the best card he could cast at this point, as he gets to draw a card off of that. And if that's an enchantment, which it is, it's an Aura of Silence. That's also pretty huge. That does shut down what Dylan's doing pretty much altogether. I forgot that was in the main deck. That is problematic for Dylan. We are going to play this Aura of Silence. Does get to draw 2, thanks to the Argothian Enchantress and Enchantress Presence. Sean being very good about walking through Dylan. I think Dylan letting him know that not super familiar with this format, not super familiar with this build of the deck. And I'm not quite sure if Sean remembered to return Undiscovered Paradise. We can just assume he did. He's got 3 land drops and not enough lands to play out. Alright, but interestingly, well, I guess he is all tapped out at this point. Did draw an Argothian Enchantress, which is not enchantment. And I do believe that makes Sean enchantment light in hand. Alright, Dylan is going to hard cast here. The Provoking Horror. And Sean doing a little bit of reorging. Sees, ooh, a Sterling Grove. That's actually pretty huge. As well as his first Serra Sanctum. Okay, we're going to pitch a land here. And does Sean have an enchantment? It does not look like it. Maybe. Bit tough to tell. I mean, he paid for the enchantment, so he must. Oh, is it a Wild Growth? No, it's another Miri's Guile. Okay. Alright, Miri's Guile, draw 3. Now we know 2 of them are lands, but one of them is a Sterling Grove, which can at least find you another enchantment on top. I believe you can sack it in response to the draw triggers if you absolutely want to. But Sean going to roll the dice here, drawing 3 when 90% of your deck is enchantments. That's not correct, but it certainly feels like it. Does find a Parallax Wave, and I think that's going to seal things. Right, that is a Parallax Wave in hand, has a Serra Sanctum, can play the Sanctum. Does he have 2 waves? I think he has 2 waves, yeah. This is pretty much over. Asking how familiar you are with Serra Sanctum. It taps for more mana than you'll ever need at this point. Let's see, he's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 enchantments out currently. If he doesn't forget about the Wild Growth. Or does he have 10? No, he's only got 9. Unless I'm missing a Wild Growth somewhere. Either way, A lot of mana. I don't think it's going to be relevant. Alright, there is the wave. You no longer have zombies or a Kurokian horror. I guess technically at Sean's discretion. Now, with Sterling Grove out, he does have to spend one of his counters to hit the Sterling Grove first with the Parallax Wave. And then he can do it. And he just has to do that each time. Oh god, there's another Enchantress Presence. Draw cards. At this point, the game is over. Dylan is just trying to see more of this deck, I believe. But there's not too much he's able to do here. There's another wave. Draw 4. Dylan might be open. His opponent decks himself. However, that's not really going to happen. There is no Guy's Blessings in Sean's build. So he could actually deck himself, but before then, there's going to be a whole lot of damage coming in. Okay, so I believe Sean did explain to Dylan that he's going to shortcut this to hit Sanctum, or he's just sacrificing the Sanctum. And that will get exiled under it. Are we not doing the trick to just exile it? Interesting. Yeah, Opalescence does not make itself a creature, but we are swinging in for a lot of damage here. Yeah, one of those Enchantress Presence came into play this turn. It's been a long turn. I think, yeah, Dylan is just gonna untap here, take a look at his top card, and probably scoop it up. After, of course, Sean discards more cards than Dylan has in hand. It is interesting that Sean didn't just go for the straight exile on the Kurokian Horror. Maybe not want to reveal that combo to his opponent yet. And yeah, it looks like Dylan's going to scoop it up, and we're going to game number 2. And here we are in game number 2. Dylan will be on the play here. And yes, I think a hand with hand attack is very necessary here for Dylan to try and slow things down. Dystopias are good in this matchup, but I feel like they can be sometimes a little too slow. Dylan just giving that a quick read as well. But if you can get ahead of your opponent and get one out, I do think it can be a good delay tactic to the point where you're able to get down a Contamination and a Zombie Infestation and really we'll go off from there. Oftentimes, Dystopia is only good usually for getting 1, maybe 2 things I've found, and then it's more of just a deterrent, and you're paying life to keep it up for a little while you rebuild. Alright, Cabal Therapy. Did he name Argothian Enchantress? Looks like he did. That makes sense. It is the cheaper of the 2. That is going to go to the bin, and we see an absolute stacked hand here for Sean. Forest go. An Opalescence, a Wave, an Enchantress Presence, a Sanctum, and another Forest. Alright, there's another Cabal Therapy. Yep, gonna name the Enchantress Presence. Makes sense. Just get to reveal. I believe that's the second Solitary Confinement. So both coming in here in the sideboard from Sean. Plays out a Forest to say go. Mountain here for Dylan and a pass. Opting to not play out the Dystopia. Plains go here from Sean. Alright, we do have... looks like a Buried Alive. Are we going to go for the Buried Alive here? We have no Zombie Infestation yet that I know of. He could play out a Kerokian Horror. Not sure if that's super relevant. I think you go for the Buried Alive, maybe. The deck is designed to do one thing. If you can start getting value back, you might as well. He already has the one Horror, but I do think... Okay, getting an Anger as well. That makes sense. I do think there's something to be said for a 1 Squee, 2 Horror pile. I mean, Anger's obviously very good as well. To get that in the graveyard is important. But with the Squee and the Horrors, you can at least get, I feel like, a couple more zombies throughout the course of the game with them returning on end step. And Sean here gonna play out the Sanctum. Doesn't tap for anything currently, but is gonna play the Solitary Confinement. Say go. And I'm still pretty sure Dystopia works here. Okay, we're gonna get back both Squeeze. Because Dystopia, I believe, is each opponent. And I have to think that's coming down. I also think that Dylan probably should have fetched there. I would have grabbed probably Red Source, just in case you find a Devastating Dreams. But I know it's negligible. But just ripping a land off the top when you have a fetch land out is never a good feeling. Okay, there's a Kerokian Horror. Does Dystopia not target? That is the question. I mean, Dylan maybe wanted to build his board out a little bit, figuring Sean discarding a card is relevant. Going to discard the Opalescence. However, if Sean has an Replenish, sorry, that could be very problematic. There's an Instant Blood. Not relevant here, so just pass him. And Sean pitching a lot of cards here to keep this Solitary Confinement up. Alright, we got the Zombie Infestation. Sean has seen enough. He's going to sack the Solitary Confinement. He can do it in such a way that he does draw a card. But realizing that he's not getting out of this.
I'm gonna keep it in play. That's okay. I have to do that. Discarded.
Oh, actually, is keeping it on the board. Okay. Oh, and then does have the Replenish. And this is hugely problematic. Alright, so we get Enchantress Presence and Opalescence and Palace Wave. This makes sense why Sean casted, or kept the confinement on the field, I should say. However, he still doesn't get out of this. Eventually, he's going to have to sack the confinement next turn. The Enchantress Presence doesn't trigger off of the Opalescence and Wave, I guess. I would have to remember to see if it's a cast trigger. I think it is. Let's actually look it up now while Dylan gives himself a quick shake. See if he can figure a way out.
Okay. Okay. End of your turn.
Alright, make a zombie. Yeah, it's whenever you cast an enchantment for presence. That's what I thought. However, with Opalescence and Wave, Sean can remove however many zombies Dylan decides to make here. Okay, just find a Duress for turn. I think you play the Dystopia. I was going to look that up again. Oh, does he have a Contamination? He has a Contamination too. However, with the Opalescence and the Wave, the Contamination just gets eaten up by the Wave. So, unfortunately, not doing much there. Okay, we are going to Edict here. And yeah, Sean gonna sack the solitary confinement. Makes sense. And yeah, Dystopia, I'm trying to think what the original wording is, but it does get around solitary confinement. I'm pretty sure, because it does not target.
On top of or under innocent blood.
Yeah. So, although again, I'm talking through the line, Opalescence and Wave lets him eat the Dystopia. He probably should have played it out the turn the Kerokian Horror was out. I don't know. I don't know if there's a way around this replenish. This comes full circle back to why I believe the Parallax cards are too oppressive for this format. Once a wave with an Opalescence is resolved, there's very few things a lot of decks can do against it, as a lot of the deck's answers are oftentimes enchantments, especially for black, unfortunately. Red just has Stone Cold nothing. Yeah. So Dylan gonna play a Dystopia here. It will get gobbled up by the wave, unfortunately, but not having a lot of outs. And while I recognize that Tide is definitely the more powerful of the two in a lot of matchups, I do think Wave is by far the more unfun, if that makes sense. Power level is its whole other discussion, and I do think Tide is a bit too powerful to be left in the format to allow a lot of deck diversity to thrive. However, Wave is also actively repressing creature decks and just creates very unfun patterns.
So then you have to go to 3.
Yeah, Kerokian Horror, unfortunately not able to target the wave. There's not much Dylan can do at this point, unfortunately. It's mostly about going through the motions. Sean has a 4/4 that can just keep swinging in, be completely unblockable until it's well, I mean, an Edict effect with it being the only thing on the board would be really the only answer, but he has the Enchantress presence. Sean can blink the Enchantress presence in response to any removal. Again, not too much. I mean, Dylan would need a double Edict, essentially. I think that's his out here. He needs 2 Innocent Bloods. He's already used 1. There's 2 left in the deck if he didn't take them out for sideboarding. And interestingly, Sean does not eat the Dystopia and sacks the Enchantress presence. That, in fact, baffles me. Alright, yeah. Dylan gonna discard 2 to make a zombie. Sean will exile it. There's a Tormod's Script. Oh boy. Sean with all the answers. And I am afraid Dylan is going to lose all the value in his graveyard. No more Anger, no more Squeeze, no more Kerokian Horror. And at this point, I do think it's probably over. Yeah, Dylan gonna pay the 1. It is cumulative, so he doesn't need to keep track of that. But I don't think it's gonna matter.
So this isn't a creature, right?
Each other global enchantment, yeah.
I'm confused.
I'm sorry.
Dylan maybe just doing a little bit of commiserating here. He does have the Contamination again.
Eating your shit.
Contamination not being relevant in this because Opalescence
Each other
does allow him
enchantment
to infinitely
is a creature.
blink
But I'm
the wave, but also
trying to
remove
target
all of
Paralysis.
Dylan's enchantments
Parallax Wave can target itself. It is a creature.
because they are now creatures.
So if you exile,
Yeah.
then what happens? It comes back?
It exiles because the ability for
There's also something to be said for newer players coming into the format, and this is one of their first games.
But it can't
This
stay
level of
exiled.
interaction.
correct.
Like, oh, you just can't do anything. Yeah, all those sideboard pieces you have to deal with white enchantments.
But you can't.
Yeah, that don't work.
You can't exile this.
Not for this matchup, at least.
Okay.
Dystopia is great in Terrafor,
But you can exile
or
this.
versus Terrafor, I should say.
It's gonna always
Also exile your
That's
enchantments.
one of the main reasons why it's in there, but of course, you know, it can work well against Enchantress.
kill your shit.
Alright, there's a Perish, which doesn't do anything and isn't Japanese,
It's good against
which might be
bring it in, I think, but like, yeah.
part of Dylan's confusion. But I think at this point, he might just be on tilt a little bit. Basically saying that all the cards in your deck don't work against what Sean's doing
Might be only green.
is troublesome, to say the least.
Assistant for Parish, right? Oh.
And to my credit, I actually didn't bring this deck too lone out. I was fully planning on just having it as an extra deck to play in between rounds, but Dylan was asking for something else to play. He had brought Sly, I guess, and deciding against it. Although it is a great deck for newer players to the format. Dylan is not a new player by any means. I think I mentioned the deck tech. He is a Pro Tour competitor. But if you're not familiar with Premodern, it does have a bit of a learning curve.
Oh, instant.
And I'm wondering if Sean is maybe a little bit unfamiliar with the Opalescence and Wave interaction as well. Okay, he is going to exile it, and then he's going to target the Wave to exile itself. So,
And target that.
okay, he does remember that this does work.
Gets it flickered. Comes back in at 5.
And kind of explaining it to Dylan as well.
Target in response.
And then, yes, it's going to do the same thing with
Do the same.
Zombie Infestation, and I think at this point, Dylan realizing that he's never getting a creature on the board again.
4.
If he draws an Edict effect, though, it is relevant because Sean let that Enchantress Presence die.
Aura of Silence.
But there's an Aura of Silence, so it doesn't actually matter. And yeah, I think at this point, Dylan's saying, well, I have a Contamination, but it doesn't matter. So we are going to call it there, and Sean takes it down in 2. Well, those are the breaks sometimes. Definitely a rough intro to the format, but hopefully Dylan sticks with it. I don't want to spoil anything, but I know he did actually pretty well in this tournament with this deck, this game notwithstanding. So anyways, thanks to all you guys for making it this far. If you like the video, make sure to give it a like, and if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to subscribe as well. It's your best way to find your way back here, and it's the best way to support what I'm doing for free. If you've been subscribed for a while, consider joining the Patreon. You may notice all the wonderful names displayed on screen. Those are all my current patrons. I could not do this without you guys. Thank you all so much. Money from the Patreon goes directly back into the channel in the form of gear upgrades, travel expenses to go to tournaments like this one in Albany. I do actually want to do a quick shout out again for the Matt Cave in Albany and Cherry City Gaming for putting on this amazing event and letting me go down there to film it. It was an absolute blast. And yeah, that's all we got for now. See you next time.